Hello everybody, welcome back.
How's it going?
Well, first, if this video goes out Thursday, happy Thanksgiving to the Americans out there.
Turkey Day. Sarah made me do that.
She's a famous turkey impersonator.
Well, if you pay me, I'll do it better.
So happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully this will go out Wednesday, though. That is the plan. Because we got a doozy. We got a doozy of an episode here. I don't even know where to start. There's so much to this story, but we're going to take out bits and pieces of what actually is going on here, because as you can see from the title, I'm sure I'm going to do a little sensational title. Not too bad. Hopefully it's not too bad, but I mean,
There's a word for that. Clickbait.
No. You know what's funny though? This really isn't clickbait, because Ashlyn talked about everything. I mean, when I mean everything, I mean everything. And I think it has a lot of people torn about the situation because it is a sensitive situation. We've talked about it before. There are kids involved. So you want to be sensitive, but Ashlyn's putting it all out there. This isn't coming from anyone but Ashlyn. And I think that's an important part of the story, just because it's not necessarily hearsay. It's one side of the story. There's always a few sides of the story, but this is Ashlyn's side of the story. Ashlyn Harris went on a podcast. She went on the podcast called Naked Sports by Cari Champion. She went on this podcast, and it seems like Cari and Sophia have been friends. I think maybe that's how they connected. But this podcast was very intentional. And this podcast was basically for Ashlyn Harris to finally give her complete side of the story of the breakup, the divorce. In the podcast, Ashlyn Harris basically says the media has pretty much gotten Allie's side of the story, mainly because Ashlyn didn't want to air more of their personal, quote unquote, dirty laundry out into the public. She basically said the public got Allie's side. Now she wants to give her side because she believes the side that Allie has given is not the complete story. She did say in the episode that that's Allie's truth, and her therapist basically told her Allie can have her side and can speak on her side, but you can speak on yours and you have your own truth as well.
But has Allie really said anything?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. She did kind of talk about maybe I'll bring this up again, but when she had the Self magazine article, we did a video on it. She basically explained in that article how Ashlyn, she inferred that she got blindsided getting the divorce papers, and that her teammates were right there and they were supportive. She made it sound like Ashlyn blindsided her. And Ashlyn in the interview basically said she had already been moved out of their marital home. She was living in an apartment somewhere else in the city. The press had already found out that they had gotten rid of their dogs. It wasn't a shock. So and that kind of goes back to the whole interview. It's a long interview. I almost didn't listen to the whole interview just because I thought maybe I could just go from the headlines. But I'm glad I did. I got a sense of how Ashlyn feels. Now, you still might not agree with what Ashlyn says. You still might not be on Ashlyn's side, but she's giving her side. But definitely listen to the whole episode. I'm going to kind of read the headlines because I think this is what most people are hearing about. Because I do want to talk about this because this it's part of the story.
Ashlyn Harris claims she and ex-Allie Krieger weren't intimate the entire part of our marriage. Ashlyn Harris is reflecting on her relationship with ex-Allie Krieger. The former U.S. Women's National Team star, 39, opened up about the end of the former couple's relationship and how hard of a process it was for her during an appearance on the Monday, November 25th episode of the Naked Sports with Cari Champion podcast, where she claimed that the pair weren't intimate the entire part of their marriage. I just felt like I wasn't a priority, Harris explained. I didn't feel that sense of connection, whether emotional or physical. It was soccer, jobs, kids, and then somewhere down the line, it was like, okay, what about me? Noting that she is a touchy-feely person, Harris went on to say she could only give so much until you really have nothing left, adding that she became very, very good at disassociating because of her ability to sit and suffer and her ability to serve other people before herself, where she genuinely thinks kept her in that marriage for as long as it did. Harris claimed that she started trying all these things, like suggesting an open marriage, which she said was not even her, to attempt to salvage their union. I felt so embarrassed and I felt so much shame that I didn't know how to tell people that, like Like, oh, my wife doesn't want to touch me or doesn't want to be intimate or doesn't want this, Harris admitted, which prompted host Cari Champion to ask if Krieger, 40, would disagree with her assessment of their relationship. No, she can't say that because we weren't intimate the entire part of our marriage, she claimed. So facts are just the facts. It is what it is.
So those are kind of like the headlines I think a lot of publications are running with, because those are pretty, yes, they're sensationalized, but Ashlyn saying those kind of things is kind of wild. Even if you agree or don't agree, her even kind of saying that's one of the main things that broke down the marriage is kind of dramatic or intimate, or I don't even, Sarah and I will probably cut it out. We were thinking of a good word to use, but to say that's one of the things that really impacted her marriage, because what she said in the interview, that Allie, it was like a business. She didn't want to be physical. She didn't want to get intimate, or however you would say that. And it really impacted Ashlyn. She didn't feel worthy. She didn't feel like she was worthy or enough. Then she, in the article, it also said that she even said, do you want to do an open marriage? As like a last ditch effort. And then she's like, that's not even me. So it seemed like this marriage had broken down so far that I don't even think there wasn't saving to it. And for Ashlyn to be saying these things now is pretty, I think it's a bit oversharing. I think it's a bit excessive to be sharing that. But if that's her truth, then that's her truth. So those were kind of the big headlines, but so much went into this interview, and questions. Why is she doing this big interview? Two reasons, I think. A, to rewrite the narrative, that the narrative has been a lot of Allie. Also, I think she's doing some type of podcast, or she was promoting the podcast kind of at the end. I actually couldn't put that together. So there might be a few reasons why she decided to do this podcast. Here's some more things she said about her state of mind and how she was feeling from her perspective.
So she says, I was just so broken. I was so, damn it, I have so broken, and I wanted someone to love me so bad. I caved every bit of who I was inside to try to be more lovable, to be enough, just wanted to be enough. I wanted to be able to walk through the door and someone miss me, want me, need me in any way that wasn't so business, that wasn't so on the field. Everyone thought that it was this way. But at home, I felt like I was living with a stranger, and I just had to take my power back. And unfortunately, people were hurt in the process. And I want to make room for both because it's not easy. Like, everyone has an experience, however, only one experience played out in the media, which is quite difficult. And I was reading the transcription, so if that sounded a little choppy or a little off, it's just because I was reading the transcription of what she said.
And in the interview, she basically said they didn't communicate well. Once soccer was done, then it turned even more into a business. They didn't have as much in common. I believe that was one of the quotes. But it just seems like it seems like they never fully communicated that well to begin with, which is hard, because if she had known this, and then, I don't know, part of me was just like, these two people probably should have never gotten married. They never seemed to communicate based on what Ashlyn's saying very well. And, in the intimacy thing, if that was important to Ashlyn, and Allie wasn't, you have to be intimacy compatible. You know what I mean? And it seems like either they weren't, or what Ashlyn is saying, Allie didn't want to be intimate with her because she had just disconnected from the relationship herself and made it into the kids' work, and didn't make Ashlyn a priority. Again, this is coming from Ashlyn's perspective, but I think Ashlyn's just trying to give her side of the story, I guess, because she feels like so many people are on Allie's side. And then here's another quote from what Ashlyn said about the narrative that Allie said that she was blindsided. And we talked a little bit about this before, but this is a little bit more from Ashlyn's point of view.
I remember calling her saying, hey, the lawyer thinks if we file jointly, it won't be such an issue, because the tabloids were calling our agents. They knew we got rid of the dogs. There were all these things going on that people were catching wind of. So, people were reaching out to their agents, be my agent, her agent at the time were the same. Hey, this is what we're figuring out. Do you have any statements? So I kept being like, We have to get ahead of this. We have to say something. And the whole plan was to hold off until the end of the season. And I remember calling and saying, you want to file jointly. This is going to be what's best. And she said, nah, you'll come crawling back in 6 months. And I filed, and then all of a sudden she was blindsided by it. And I'm like, I gave you the opportunity, and you were like, I just don't think I ever believed it. So I'm not taking anything away from her experience. There's always 2 sides to a story. Yeah, three in total. And I want to make space and room for her pain because that matters to me and her healing process. And I understand that she was, listen, I'm not an idiot. There has been, for someone to not want to be intimate with me for that long, I must not be, you must not be happy either. But every time in therapy, I would ask, what is it, And sometimes I'd be met with, we're together too much. I don't miss you. I don't miss, but those things I can't correct or fix to grow together. I was reading the transcript again.
Yeah. So I'll put it on the screen too. So if you read it, because I don't think I can play the audio, just copyright things. But I mean, there was a lot of problems in this marriage, and it seemed like Allie had checked out. It seemed like Ashlyn had checked out, and it seemed like it does seem like Allie was fine with the whole divorce. But the big thing Allie said was, wait till the end of the season. And Ashlyn's just kind of like, I don't want to pretend. I have to go live my life. It seems like she was willing to possibly wait until Allie allegedly made that comment. This is all Ashlyn's stories. The comment about, you'll be crawling back to me in 6 months. So it sounded like maybe they were going to wait. But once Allie made that comment, Ashlyn just kind of said that she wasn't going to wait because Allie never believed she would file for divorce. And then at that point, she was just like, oh, I'm doing it. Kind of pushed her over the edge to file. It's just so messy. It's so messy. But now Ashlyn is kind of telling her side of the story. And what I took from this is that it's very messy. And whether or not you take Ashlyn's side or Allie's side, it just seems so messy. They weren't communicating at all. And Ashlyn did say she lost a lot of her friends, mutual friends. And she did say something. She goes, a lot of mutual friends were willing to take sides. But Ashlyn has information on a lot of these mutual friends that says, basically, I have receipts about maybe kind of like some of the friends had skeletons in their own closets. So for the friends to judge and pick a side, it was kind of like, well, who are you to judge when you have your own, skeletons in your closet? And how some friends wouldn't hang out because of the optics. Like, oh, you're hanging out with Ashlyn. People are going to look at me different. And it's just so messy. I think that was just part of her frustration with, she said she lost she lost friends, she lost money, she lost contracts, she lost the job through Gotham, obviously. She actually said something interesting.
Really? I didn't realize she lost that job.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was public knowledge, but she said she was the creative director. But she said at some point she doesn't work with Gotham anymore. But she said before everything had kind of broke, Gotham asked that she not go to games anymore because she was a distraction. And so she felt like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all my friends. I'm losing everything. And now Gotham's saying I can't even come to games anymore. So it was a shit show. But I mean, she basically said she wanted to have her side of the story come out. And, I'm not on anyone's side. I've learned so much. I'm not on anyone's side. I think when the whole lemonade thing came out, I think she thought that people were just on Allie's side. That was the truth. And she said
But we love Allie.
Yeah, I know. But she said the biggest misconception is that she's a cheater. And she goes, I am not a cheater. That's the biggest misconception about this whole situation. I'm not a cheater. And she goes,
people are gonna call her a cheater and think she cheated no matter what, just because of the messiness, I guess, of the divorce and just because the way everything happened.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people think either Ashlyn moved on too quickly or there was some type of fuzzy timeline, or because she was in a relationship so soon after Allie, even if they had both checked out of the marriage, it seemed like Ashlyn had moved quicker. And I think that wasn't in Ashlyn's favor either, along with other things, And I also think a big part of it is just so many people love Allie because she, seems like a very sweet person. Her personality is very sweet. And she did so much for the U.S. women's national team. She, if it wasn't for her, who knows how those World Cups, I mean, she was such a big part of those teams. And a lot of people, if this is fair or not, a lot of people said for how much Ashlyn played, she sure seemed to be cocky and overconfident, or whatever you want to say that. So personality wise, people just really liked Allie, and kind of like the narrative, like, I never liked Ashlyn anyway. So I don't think Ashlyn, people weren't going to naturally be on Ashlyn's side just for that. And is that fair? No. Is that fair? Not really. But I think that's the way, if you're a fan of someone, you're going to say, put all the pieces together and say, I'm on so-and-so's side. They just love Allie. And then people didn't like Ashlyn's attitude. And I think that's not me and Sara saying that. Just kind of the narrative I see around. They thought she was kind of cocky, and they thought she was this for not playing that much. So people were just kind of already personally saying, I like Allie more, so they're going to take Allie's side. That's how breakups go. You know what I mean? But I do think if Allie moved on to another relationship so quick like Ashlyn did, and the roles were reversed, I don't think everyone would be on Allie's side just because they like her. Like, I'm not saying that. It kind of sounds like I'm saying that, but I think if the roles were reversed between Allie and Ashlyn, and it seemed like Allie moved on quickly, I think a lot of people would say, like, hey, what about Ashlyn? So it's just so messy, But she did say Allie, that might be her truth. And I think I said this at the beginning of the video. Throughout this whole time, Ashlyn was in therapy, and the therapist basically said, Allie might be saying that. It's her truth. She has to process it too. And Ashlyn would say to her therapist, well, it's not true. And then the therapist would say, well, it's her truth. And that's hard too, The one thing I will say, bringing up the intimacy and all that, I think that is a little bit too messy. That did seem a little over the top. I think we could have gotten the message, without saying they weren't intimate for parts of their marriage, whole parts of their marriage. I don't know. And I think the phrase was entire parts of our marriage. And I'm not even quite sure what that means. And I think it means just like extended periods of the marriage, or maybe at the end. But that was a kind of a funny phrase too. And also the open marriage. But I kind of get what the open marriage is kind of like the thing that's but I kind of get what she's saying. She's just grasping at straws. Maybe this could work for us for a bit. You know what I mean?
Did you say the open marriage is going around?
No, that's kind of like what all the headlines are saying.
Oh, I thought you said that's the popular thing that's going around TikTok.
Well, in celebrity world, I know it's more common than you would think. But the open marriage thing was just kind of like grasping at straws at the very end. But this was Ashlyn's truth. Take it, it is what it is. It's just kind of crazy, but she was finally able to sit down, explain her side of the story, which I think is good for her, if anything, mentally. I will say she's now with Sophia Bush, and it seems like she's doing things, podcasts, and part of some like investment group, something. So she's doing things. She can go be successful doing what she wants to do. Allie can be successful doing what she wants to do, She could be like almost like Ashlyn can just be, I know this is going to sound bad, but Sophia's girlfriend in like not a bad way, you know what I mean? Ashlyn, her and Sophia are together, they seem happy, they've been doing events, so they can be happy doing what they're doing, not in a judgy way, but just in a way of like they can live their life, Allie can live her life. I think a lot of WOSO fans are kind of just like, hey, Ashlyn, like, I think a lot of them are just kind of like, the whole thing's just messy. I'm not on the side. I wish nothing but the best for Ashlyn. I wish nothing but the best for Allie, but it's just so messy.
I don't know where you're getting that information from. No, just kidding.
I see the likes and I see things on Ashlyn's posts. A lot of people like them, and I know that it's just messy, but what do we always say? These kind of situations are very relatable in real life, messy divorces. What does everyone think? I don't even know how I'm going to edit this. I kind of went sidetracked a couple times. It's just, if you want to listen to the interview, it's mostly just about the relationship, which I kind of was surprised, but then I realized, oh, this is her writing her own narrative. This was all planned for her to kind of give her side of the story, and that made sense. But this was her side of the story, and my takeaway from this: two people that just lost communication, maybe never figured out all their issues, and it was probably doomed to fail from the beginning, which is not saying anything unique, because a lot of marriages are like that. But it was very messy. Questions, comments down below. What do you think? Does this change your opinion of Ashlyn or Allie? Or after listening to this interview, I kind of just was almost numb. I was like, okay. So it's just a really crappy situation. What does everyone think? Questions, comments down below. I don't even know how long this video is going to be. We've been yapping for a long time. We'll talk to everyone later. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye.